First in Cebu City tomorrow and in his hometown in General Santos City on Saturday. Senators Lacson and Tito Soto are doing away with a massive gathering, but they will cap off their campaign with a visit to Lacson's home province, Cavite, tomorrow. Manila Mayor Isko Moreno will return to where he says his journey as a public servant began at Tondo, Manila on Saturday. Labor leader Yodi de Guzman and running mate Walden Bello, along with their senatorial slate, held their meeting de avance at the Quezon Memorial Circle last night. De Guzman's camp decided to hold it earlier to avoid clashing with other candidates. De Guzman says he has accepted that he still lags behind in surveys, but he believes he has won in terms of getting his message across to a wider audience. The event was their last grand rally, but De Guzman says they will continue to campaign until Saturday. Meanwhile, survey frontrunner Bongbong Marcos kicked off his meeting de avance in Iloilo province on Tuesday for the Visayas leg before culminating his campaign in Parañaque on Saturday. Marcos is holding another meeting de avance this time in Mindanao. Well, we bring you now to Tagum City in Davao del Norte, where Marcos and his running mate Sara Duterte are meeting their supporters. This is their fourth visit to the province, where the governor and the congressman support Marcos's arch-rival Leni Robredo. Our correspondent Rex Unito has the latest.
It's been raining and drizzling here in Tagum City. People, however, are braving the weather, waiting for Marcos and Duterte. Protected by raincoats and umbrellas, they were chanting they were not paid to be here. Some of them have been here for hours, with busloads and truckloads of people trooping to the City Hall grounds since this morning. Traffic has been heavy around the area. Some featured artists are entertaining the crowd as they patiently wait for the tandem. People brought with them their hopes for a better future under a Marcos presidency. The Marcos camp meanwhile denies it chose Davao del Norte as a show of force against Governor Edwin Jubahib and 1st District Representative Bebot Alvarez. Both Jubahib and Alvarez have recently pledged their support to Robredo. This time, Marcos is seeking to carry Davao del Norte and the entire Davao region, where he lost big time to Senator Alan Peter Cayetano when they both ran for Vice President in 2016. In the latest Pulse Asia survey, however, Marcos is leading here with 92 points against Robredo's 1 point. Critics and some statisticians have been calling out the pollster for some flaws in the design of its survey. Some analysts say Sara Duterte has been instrumental in helping boost Marcos's campaign, especially in Mindanao. Whether or not it will help him win the presidency, we will know by Monday. Rex Remitio, CNN Philippines, Davao del Norte.
Well, Marcos retains his wide lead over Vice President Leni Robredo in the latest and final pre-election survey released by Okta Research. Marcos got 58% of voter preference, which is 1 point above his rating in February. Robredo saw a 3-point increase and got 25%. Manila Mayor Isko Moreno remained in third place with 8%. Unlike in the Pulse Asia survey, where Senators Manny Pacquiao overtook him. Pacquiao got 5%. Senator Lacson rounded up the top 5 with 2%. Over to the vice presidential survey, Sara Duterte is still in the lead with 56%, trailing behind our Senate President Tito Soto with 22%, Senator Kiko Pangilinan 16%, Doc Willie Ong 4%, and Representative Lito Atienza 1%. Unlike in the Pulse Asia survey, Atienza did not fall to 6th place. We'll break down these numbers with Okta Research fellow Guido David on News.ph tonight at 7. President Duterte declares May 9, Monday, a special non-working holiday for the national and local elections. A proclamation signed by the President states there is a need to declare the elections a holiday to enable the public to properly exercise their right to vote amid public health measures brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. The worst is yet to come in the war in Eastern Europe, with Ukrainians bracing for what could be a turning point in the months-long Russian invasion. Russia denies plans to declare an all-out war on May 9th. As Ukraine stands its ground, it will not surrender an inch of its land. Tristan Nadal reports.
Nearly 3 months into the Russian invasion of Ukraine, there are no signs of backing down in the attacks. Some Western countries warn that Russia may take their military operations to the next level on May 9th, a special holiday in Moscow commemorating its victory in the Second World War.
There may be a big announcement by the Russian president on the 9th of May, Russian leadership to escalate the conflict to a different level. We are prepared for that. Our country has been in a state of war for the past 8 years. So we are prepared for all kinds of scenarios, and we are ready to continue defending every inch of our land.
Ukrainian Ambassador Alexander Nechetailo is currently in Manila for a short visit to express his country's gratitude to the Philippines for its continuous support and discuss how the two nations could further help each other. He also explained why Filipinos should care about what's happening in Ukraine despite its distance.
The increase of price for the food, staple food, the violation of international law, the world will become more volatile.
Some 11 million people have been displaced since the war in Ukraine broke out, now viewed as the largest humanitarian crisis since the World War II in Europe.
If Ukraine falls, then definitely the conflict will spread to other parts, not just in Europe, probably maybe in other parts of the world as well. Philippines has been very consistent supporting us in the international organization, in the UN and other international fora.
While there's no end in sight just yet, the Ukrainian official believes Moscow cannot sustain the war for years.
The major turnaround or breakthrough on the battlefield will happen in the next 4 to 6 weeks. We are talking about perhaps months, not years.
President Rodrigo Duterte has been consistently expressing fears over the possibility of a nuclear war.
And even this rocos in Ukraine, magdasal lang tayo na it will not degenerate into something like a nuclear warfare. Tapos tayo. Tapos tayong lahat.
There are two aspects of the ongoing talks between Ukraine and Russia. One is humanitarian, while the other one is military and defense. Ukraine insists they're not after a short-term ceasefire, but for a long-term settlement of the conflict. But reaching a deal for now remains uncertain. Tristan Udalo, CNN Philippines.
Coming up, the World Health Organization is sounding the alarm on the rapid spike in cases in South Africa because of 2 new Omicron subvariants. And we're learning more about the much-awaited album of K-pop superstars BTS. Details right here on CNN Philippines.
LG OLED Evo, SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement, gama sa Davao para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement, ato ni Bay.
PG Party List, kasangga mo, balot 108 iboto. PG Party List, boses natin sa Kongreso. PG Party List, kasangga mo, balot 108 iboto. PG Party List, basic to ating to. Let's all vote mga kapatid for PG Party List. PG stands for basic goods sa balota 108. Kabuhayan pag-asenso para sa lahat. This is our goal and our advocacy. PG Party List for you and me. PG Party List, kasangga mo, balot 108 iboto. PG Party List, boses natin sa Kongreso. PG Party List, kasangga mo, balot 108 iboto. PG Party List, basic to ating to. Pagkaisa ng mahig ang mga hinaing. Young and active leaders sa Kongreso ang boses natin. Tandaan ang iboto, balota 108. Civilian realize the projects we dreamed of. PG Party List, vote 108 na. PG Party List, kasangga mo, balot 108 iboto. PG Party List, boses natin sa Kongreso. PG Party List, kasangga mo, balot 108 iboto. PG Party List, basic to ating to. PG Party List, List, atin to.
This is a paid advertisement paid for by Danny Q. Tampan, 599 Narciso Street, Surigao City.
Explains the government deferred more loans amid the health crisis. Inflation also rose to 4.9% in April, up from 4% the month before. This is the fastest since December 2018, when the rate was at 5.2%. Food, transportation, housing, water, and power top the sources of quicker inflation. Meanwhile, Meralco vows to comply with the order of the Energy Regulatory Commission to refund 7.75 billion pesos in overcharges to residential customers this month. The amount is equivalent to 46 pesos and 69 centavos per kilowatt hour. Each customer will get a 93 peso refund for a 200 kilowatt hour consumption. In COVID-19 headlines, the World Health Organization raises the alarm over 2 Omicron subvariants causing a spike in infections in South Africa, while health officials here at home are racing against time to determine whether the more infectious variants have spread in the community. More from Caroline Bonkin.
From over 20 million COVID-19 cases weekly in January, only nearly 4 million per week have been reported worldwide in April. Weekly deaths now also at the lowest since March 2 years ago. But the World Health Organization warns
these trends, while welcome, don't tell the full story.
infections in South Africa yet again on the rise, and the culprits, 2 offshoots of the Omicron variant, BA.4 and BA.5. South African scientists found these can evade antibodies from previous infection and could spark a new wave, but less likely among vaccinated people.
It's too soon to know whether these new subvariants can cause more severe disease than other Omicron subvariants. But early data suggests vaccination remains protective against severe disease and death. This is another sign that the pandemic is not done with us.
He points out vaccines, antiviral treatments, and testing are crucial, as well as genome sequencing, a way to check infected persons for variants. He says countries that stop sequencing are blind to how the virus is mutating.
We don't know what's coming next.
Here at home, while sequencing goes down as cases decline, the Philippine Genome Center continues checking samples for variants. Among the next batch, samples from 14 infected foreign travelers and a local crew from Palawan. While waiting for the results, health authorities in Puerto Princesa City are backtracking their itinerary, citing possibility some might have been infected before traveling to Palawan. They arrived on April 23rd. 2 of the tourists had fever after 2 days.
Galing talaga sa labas kasi nakita mo naman na within 2 days pa lang, bago nag-symptoms. Mabuti na lang ito, ma'am, kasi meron silang antigen test, di ba? So, tinest nila yun. What if kung dun sa mga other areas na meron palang ubo, may mga sipon-sipon, ay hindi natitest, yun ang mahirap, madadali talaga tayo.
Local health authorities now asking tour operators, hotel and resort owners help in monitoring possible infections. This includes checking visitors for symptoms and testing them when needed. Palanca says most of the COVID cases in Puerto Princesa City these past weeks involve tourists. Caroline Bonkin, CNN Philippines.
Candidates make their final push on the campaign trail with just 4 days to go before the Filipino votes. Vice President Leni Robredo got a warm welcome from supporters in the city of Osamis in Misamis Occidental. She and her running mate, Senator Kiko Pangilinan, got the support of 200 clergy, religious, and consecrated persons from the Archdiocese of Cebu today. The group says the tandem embodies the church's values such as integrity and concern for the marginalized. Manila Mayor Isko Moreno received a warm welcome from supporters in the town of Sogod in southern Leyte. Senator Manny Pacquiao visited the town of San Remigio in the country's most vote-rich province, Cebu. He was supposed to be there at 9 in the morning and kept supporters waiting for hours until his arrival late this afternoon. Senator Ping Lacson and running mate Sen President Tito Soto are in the city of Cagayan de Oro, their final stop in Mindanao before the elections.
I've been in government for 50 years or so. No, if I don't make it, then ang iniisip ko lagi, yung peace and quiet are two of the most precious rewards ng buhay ng tao. So I'll retire and live in peace, live quietly. I-delete ko na lahat yung mga pangalan nyo sa contact list ko para wala na tayong contact. If I make it, I'm prepared, I'm ready to serve for another 6 years.
Independent presidential candidate Ernie Abella and Vice Presidential Bet Manny Lopez take the stage at the third round of the Commission on Elections and the Kapisanan ng mga Broadcaster ng Pilipinas Forum. As Chrissy Matulak tells us, one of them vows to prioritize vaccination for senior citizens despite not being inoculated himself.
Simplify access to loans to help small businesses and individuals recover from the pandemic. This is one of the solutions offered by Vice Presidential candidate Manny Lopez for economic recovery during the third salvo of COMELEC KBP Pilipinas Forum. According to Lopez and economists, the country has enough funds for micro, small, and medium enterprises, which make up 90% of the country's business population. The problem, he said, is the stringent process involved in lending money to firms and individuals. Lopez is also batting for low-interest loans with easy terms for those affected by the pandemic.
Ito po will be a loan program that will allow struggling firms and business enterprises and individuals para maka-access sa ating mga loan programs. Dahil available naman po ang pera, dahil ito ay provided for ng Bayanihan Act 1 and 2. However, the billions are just lying out there because, hindi ma-access because of the stringent requirements of the commercial banks.
Former presidential spokesperson and now presidential candidate Ernesto Abella also faced the panelists. Both Abella and Lopez aim to strengthen the agricultural sector.
We can come up with one of the agriculture mega industry. One among other things what we'd like to do is to be able to partner, let's say, with IPs in order to be able to make sure that, for example, we can effectively come into a partnership with them so that we can have plantations for trees, fruit, timber.
Karamihan po ng ating mga mamamayan ay reliant sa agriculture. Kaya yan po ay bigyan natin ng mas magandang mga solusyon, hindi lang budgetary allocation.
Abella admits that he has yet to receive his COVID-19 vaccine.
Secretary, bakunado na ho ba kayo?
I have natural immunity.
Despite this, Abella assured that vaccination will be among his top priorities, especially for senior citizens. Lopez, the only vice presidential candidate without a running mate, admits he has yet to decide on his pick for president. While Abella says if he wins the presidency, he will continue many of the programs of the current administration. Chrissy Matulak, CNN Philippines.
Catch presidential candidates Manny Pacquiao, Jose Montemayor Jr., and Vice Presidential Bet Rizarito David at the COMELEC KBP Forum tomorrow at 10 and 11 in the morning here on CNN Philippines. With Mother's Day and the elections just around the corner, we pay tribute to single moms and their hopes for better leaders and a brighter future for their children. Stanley Gahete has this report on sectors on the sidelines.
Walang pwedeng tumulong sa'yo as a single mom, kundi sarili mo.
For 35-year-old Arlene Peralta, being a single mother is a tough job. Arlene is a virtual assistant for a U.S. client, a transcriber, and an online seller. She's into multitasking 24/7 to give her children a better life.
Very challenging siya in a way that I need to act as a tatay and a nanay. Tapos minsan maiiyak ka na lang at the end of the day dahil sobrang busy ko. Am I doing a great job para sa kanila as a mom?
And if life wasn't bad enough, she began experiencing stereotyping and discrimination.
It is the outside. Yun yung mapaghusga na kaya yan iniwan kasi pumasok sa maling relasyon at first.
Arlene got more disappointed when a government agency rejected her loan application.
So yun, bakit po kayo single? Paano po to? Yung mga bata, dependent na po ba siya ng tatay o baka ma-double dependent? I think you should know how to approach, like us, the status that we have. Kasi hindi rin naman namin ginusto na gantong status. Kaya nga kami humihingi ng aid or assistance.
It's the same story for Jeneline Resuello, who was also denied the social services she sorely needed.
3 years ago, I tried to have a loan, housing loan. Hindi nila ako gustong ipagpalonan kasi they were asking for my husband.
Despite doing her best for her family, Jeneline knew that she has limitations and couldn't provide everything to her children.
Hindi pa rin madali ang maging single parent kasi sa paglaki nila, they should be guided well. Diba? Hindi naman po pwedeng iasa mo sa ibang tao yung pagpapalaki sa kanila.
The two single mothers realize how government and society unfairly treats them, especially regarding social services.
So, mahirap kasi hindi ako nakakapag-move talaga freely in this society. Hindi ako nakakapag-move na gawin ko ano yung pwede at nararapat para sa mga bata.
Parang na-discriminate ako somehow na dahil ba single mom ako, ganyan na. Hindi ba pwedeng mas dapat proud kayo sa akin kasi as a single person.
There are more than 4 million single female household heads based on government data. Single parents believe that they should get more social services considering that they are the only ones earning for the family.
They're not trying to deepen yung connection sa mga single mom na tulad namin.
With the elections coming, Arlene and Jeneline want to know how the next administration will help them provide a more decent life for their families, and how the next leaders can help change society's view toward all single mothers who deserve much better recognition. Stanley Gete, CNN Philippines.
Get the numbers and updates in real time on Election Day. CNN Philippines full coverage of the May 9 polls begins 5 in the morning. Join the conversation by following our social media accounts at CNN Philippines.
Their next set of leaders, who will represent their hope for a better future.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao, para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
Argument among supporters of rival local candidates in Pagantugan town on Wednesday. It is unclear from which side fire. But local police are investigating if this is an election-related incident. And in Cotabato, authorities looking into an explosion in Cotabato City Wednesday evening. Police say 2 persons threw a grenade at the back of a motorboat owned by a certain Datu Manot Sinsuat, a resident of Datu Blasinsuat, Maguindanao. No one was hurt. The Joint Task Group Cotabato condemns the incident and calls it a terror act. In other news now, President Duterte has named Lieutenant General Vicente Danao Jr. as officer in charge of the Philippine National Police effective Sunday, May 8. Danao, the current head of the PNP directorial staff, will replace General Jonard Carlos, who will retire on the eve of Election Day. Carlos served as PNP chief for only 6 months. Prior to his new appointment, Danao held other top posts, including police chief of Davao City, Calabarzon, and the National Capital Region. Straight ahead highlights of a packed opener for the UAAP women's volleyball with 2 fierce rivals, Ateneo and La Salle, and find out who are suiting up for Gilas Pilipinas for this year's Southeast Asian Games. Stay tuned to CNN Philippines.
Bilib ako sa MX3 dahil ito ay napatunayang
Welcome back to CNN Philippines Sports News now. UAAP women's volleyball matches began today with Ateneo and LaSalle reigniting the rivalry on the hard court. The game is underway. LaSalle has taken 2 sets and the team leads the 4th set, now 24-20. The Lady Eagles officially adopted the name Blue Eagles today in the university's effort to unify all Ateneo teams regardless of gender or sport. And in basketball, the list of Gilas Pilipinas players for the 31st Southeast Asian Games in Vietnam is out. Here looking at the names of 12 athletes set to defend the country's gold medal in the Vietnam meet. The list includes the brothers Ravena, Kiefer, and 30, as well as Junmar Fajardo. In a post, Coach Chot Reyes explained the absence of some popular names in the lineup, including Robert Pollock, who flew to the U.S. to be with his ailing father. And now for BTS ARMY's details on the group's much-awaited new album have been revealed. Its title, Proof, will be an anthology. With this, fans can expect a collection of the K-pop group's previous tracks, some remixes, plus 3 new songs. Proof comes out on June 10th. And before we go with the May 9 elections drawing near, what should we keep in mind when we cast our ballots? Poll watchdogs NAMFREL and PPCRV joined me on Politics as Usual on Tuesday to remind voters of common mistakes to avoid, like slashing instead of shading the oval beside their candidates' names.
Vote early and to bring a código so that they can also fill up their ballots quickly. Let's respect the will of the people.
Don't take the privilege for granted. Please go out and vote. Discern your votes well. It will affect the next 6 years of your life. PCRV and all our volunteers, 500,000 of them will be with you at the precincts to support and hold a clean, honest, accurate, meaningful, and peaceful election.
Voting is open from 6 in the morning to 7 in the evening on Monday, May 9. Again, tune in to CNN Philippines' full coverage of Election Day beginning 5 a.m. And that is it for now. Join me again on news.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. We are down to last 27 days. The Filipino votes campaigns are working extra hard, winning some and losing some. There is a mad scramble for the votes of overseas Filipinos. Social media is king, and politics has gotten into the sports mix in UAAP basketball. All these tonight on Politics as Usual, your weekly political appointment fix. Good evening, I'm Pia Ontiveros. The pandemic forced many of us to go digital. How will this help shape the way the Filipino votes? The president of the Public Relations Society of the Philippines, Harold Geronimo, joins us now live via Zoom. Hi, Harold. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. Well, let's begin with this. You have this a very interesting presentation, and we're going to be showing the slides that you did present, and we're going to go through them and make things as clear as possible for the viewers. This is something we're all familiar with, but it's good for us to do a little review every now and then in light of the elections that are happening in less than 30 days. So Harold, you're making a case for how the pandemic created a shift in how people consume media and information.
Yes. Actually, this is the latest study of Kantar Philippines. And I was also very amazed now with how they've discovered, the rise of social media really affecting the way we form opinions, especially among the Gen Zs and millennials. So during the actually during the pandemic, it totally changed the way we really consume media, and people have shifted their attention towards digital, not just because of the pandemic, but because of the closure of one of the biggest stations as well, TV stations as well. So a lot of people shifted to digital. They went to social media, and this also allowed a lot of media companies to also shift to digital as well. So they're not only on television, but they're also on digital streaming, and they're also on YouTube and Facebook. Just like CNN Philippines, this is being aired live on Facebook as well. So this totally changed the way we behave, especially among young people nowadays. You know, Pia, very important discovery I got now from that study is that pre-pandemic there were only around 3 million users of TikTok, 2 to 3 million users of TikTok in the Philippines. But after the pandemic, or during the pandemic, it actually shifted to 36 million. So it increased to 36 million. So such a very huge increase in the number of TikTok users in the Philippines. And it's now one of the largest social media platforms where Filipinos are hooked to, especially the younger ones.
Yeah.
And recently, if you try to look at TikTok, if you're in TikTok Pia, you'll be able to see that a lot of candidates are actually using TikTok to be able to reach out to a lot of young electorates.
Harold, you've gotten ahead of us already, but let's go back to TikTok in a while. And no, I'm not. I'm not on TikTok. Nakakayang aminin. But it's interesting also because in a country where there are so many social media users, so many people are on social media, and yet we have a problem with the internet, signal, Wi-Fi, etc., connection. We're not, there ang daming lugar, lalo na yung mga liblib na lugar na wala namang kuryente, and yet, ang tawag nga sa atin, social media capital of the world.
Yeah. Yes, actually, even those people in rural areas, they go to the malls, they go to public areas where there's free Wi-Fi just to have connection. So that's how addicted, if I call it. A lot of us, especially the younger generation, are just to have signal, just to have network connection. They go to places where there is free Wi-Fi. So that's the reality now. Young people, I think, we're talking about the younger generation, the Gen Zs, the millennials, those who are 18 to 40 years old. They just couldn't live without the internet.
Okay. So, syempre yung shift during the pandemic to social media, etc., led to a very sharp decline in television viewership, right, Harold? And as a matter of fact, even if, like you were saying earlier, because there are people who watch us on Facebook, but they're not watching us on television, right? Can you talk to us about those numbers?
Yeah, actually, it's there has been a huge decline, on people watching television, mainly because during the pandemic, I think a lot of people were just so bored, and a lot of people are hooked to the internet. They're doing work from home arrangements, e-learning for students, so they're on the internet all the time. All they have to do is shift from one platform to another and be able to get the news information that they need straight from the internet. So television became somehow, just a plain accessory that they don't really use it anymore. In fact, a lot of people saved a lot of electricity during this time because they were not able to use their television sets. But I can still say that this also allowed, as I've mentioned earlier, all the television networks to also be shifting to digital. And I think this is a very important milestone for the Philippine broadcasting industry, that every media company, not just television, but also print media, they are already multimedia. So they're not just a single media company, but a multimedia company.
Pati radio, di ba? Ang laki ng pinagbago.
Pati radio, here in Metro Manila, there has been a decrease in the number of listeners to radio, but in the provinces, surprisingly, in Cebu and Davao, there has been an increase in the number of listeners for FM radio. You know why? Because as students, do e-learning activities, and while people are on work from home, that penchant for listening to FM radio has been, so peculiar to the provinces, particularly in Cebu and Davao. No, they've been listening to radio while doing e-learning and while doing work from home. Surprisingly, in those regions, FM radio listening has increased.
Harold, let's talk very quickly now about itong more detalye no sa itong shift to social media. So nabanggit mo na kanina no, TikTok for example, in 2019 2 million, biglang naging 36 million. Wow, all those people on TikTok. And then so many different social media sites. But talk to us also about the quality of the output. No? Hindi lang yung number of posts, di ba? Hindi lang yung number of reactions, number of likes, etc. And then there's also other, what do you call them, apps? There's Kumu. What is this? Bigo? Ano yun? Bigo.
Yeah.
What's
These
that?
are
Bigo sa
actually
pag-ibig.
social media community platforms, no, they use this to also interact. Actually, with the rise of these new platforms, Pia, you will be able to see that the real celebrities now among the young people are not those they watch on television, but those who are on these social media platforms. Imagine on TikTok, for example, you have a user with 25 million viewers per follower, diba? So, and what do? They just dance there, they talk,
They
just
sing,
engage,
anything. Yeah.
and they create their own content. So it's like having their own television station and broadcasting what they want to broadcast any time of the day. And people are watching them, especially young people, and they get engagements. People comment, and people believe in them in a way that even if what they're wearing, what they like, what brands they use, people are just going crazy over those brands. So it's really different. It's a totally different world. No, TikTok, I think, is one of the fastest growing platforms in the Philippines today, especially for the younger ones. And mind you, even the quite older ones, Gen Z kasi tayo eh. We're on the
Tayo, okay.
and Gen X, we're on the Gen X, di ba? Gen X, Generation X tayo. But on the Gen Z and millennials, you'll be able to see that there are also a lot of older ones who are now trying to get into TikTok. So they see the importance of that.
All right, Harold, let's go now into your final words. There are takeaways that you list down in your presentation. So very quickly now, let's go into that. At the same time, address this. No, you speak to this also because it's very strange. No, that the very thing that we thought kept us apart before the pandemic, which is technology, the internet, social media, is exactly what is keeping us together. Also, what are your thoughts when it comes to the elections? Syempre, di ba? Ang laking bagay ng social media influence when it comes to how the Filipino is going to vote. So, final words, Harold.
Yeah. 52% of our electorate are actually millennials and Gen Zs. They're from the age group of 18 to 40 years old. So that's more than 30 million voters. And as early as 3 years ago in 2018, 2019, I have seen a lot of candidates using the different social media platforms to be able to manipulate mindsets among the young people. And that is what we see right now. That is what we see in terms of the results of how young people would think about candidates. And it might be too late if the candidates are going into these social media platforms right now, because the brainwashing happened like 2 to 3 years ago. So social media, digital media indeed would really make or break candidates at this time. So it's very crucial that ever you come out, whoever you tap, not just celebrities, but also influencers. This is a very crucial time for you to be able to really utilize social media so well. Social media platforms really play a very important role in terms of shaping their minds And it might be too late for some, but at least now we have a certain percentage of a big chunk pa rin of undecided ones, no? And we might be able to use social media to somehow persuade them towards the right choices.
All right, Harold Geronimo, President of the Public Relations Society of the Philippines, PRSP. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll see you again. Up next on Politics as Usual, overseas voting kicking off this week. How is the turnout and situation in polling precincts? We'll speak to COMELEC Commissioner Marlon Casquejo next.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao, para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
PG Party List, kasangga mo, balot 108 iboto. PG Party List, boses natin sa Kongreso. PG Party List, kasangga mo, balot 108 iboto. PG Party List, basic to ating to. Let's all vote mga kapatid po, PG Party List. PG stands for basic goods sa balota 108. Kabuhayan pag-asenso para sa lahat. This is our goal and our advocacy. PG Party List for you and me. PG Party List, kasangga mo, balot 108 iboto. PG Party List, boses natin sa Kongreso. PG Party List, kasangga mo, balot 108 iboto. PG Party List, basic to ating to. Pagkaisa ng mahig ang mga hinaing. Young and active leaders sa Kongreso ang boses natin. Tandaan at iboto balota 108. Civilian realize the projects we dreamed of. PG Party List, vote 108 na. PG Party List, kasangga mo, balot 108 iboto. PG Party List, boses natin sa Kongreso. PG Party List, kasangga mo, balot 108 iboto. PG Party List, basic to atin to. PG Party List, atin to.
This is a paid advertisement paid for by Donnie Q Tampan, 599 Narciso Street, Surigao City.
Welcome back. This is Politics as Usual. I'm Pia Ontiveros. It is day 3 of the month-long voting period for Filipinos abroad. Most foreign posts have hit the ground running, but others have been marred by delays. We bring in our COMELEC reporter, Melissa Lopez, with the details because overseas Filipinos voting in droves in embassies and consulates around the world. But like we said, there have been quite a few hiccups. Melissa, what can you tell us? All right, we have a little bit of an audio problem with Mel Lopez there. We're going to speak first. Can we have Mel now? All right, are we going to go to Commissioner Casquejo first? All right, let's go back to Mel now. Mel?
Pia, at least 4 of 92 foreign posts have yet to open for voting for our kababayans abroad as of today. The month-long voting period should have started at last Sunday, April 10, for 1.7 million Filipinos, but logistical issues forced the Philippine embassies in New Zealand and in Timor-Leste to push back voting, as well as in the posts in Shanghai, China, and in Milan, in Italy, to push back overseas voting. Poll materials finally arrived at the embassy in Pakistan, but voting there started a day late. In New York, mail-in ballots were sent beginning Monday night for Filipinos living in the northeast states of the U.S. Over in Hong Kong, the consul's office had to double the number of precincts for over 93,000 voters as day one of voting.
An ongoing surge in COVID-19 cases there. By Tuesday, lines were shorter and the consulate hopes Filipinos in the area will come out to vote on weekdays to lessen the weekend crowd. Meanwhile, the Comelec and Bank is set to investigate the incident in Singapore where voter Sherin Abundo was given a used ballot when she tried to vote Monday morning. She was given a replacement and was allowed to vote, an incident confirmed by the embassy. Commissioner George Garcia cites human error as the possible culprit.
This thing should have not happened at all. Of course, a single incident like this can create a doubt as to the integrity of the entire process.
There was a similar report of a voter also getting a pre-shaded ballot in Dubai, but the Philippine Post there denied that such an incident happened. Despite these hitches, Election Steering Committee Head Commissioner Marlon Casquejo described the start of overseas voting as generally peaceful and successful. Back to you, Pia.
Mel, can you tell us first about this? You know, right before the show came on air, you were saying that there was a little bit of a quarrel or a misunderstanding in Comelec and Bank about the gun ban.
That's right, Pia. A few minutes before we went to air, the Office of Commissioner Socorro Inting confirmed that she has resigned from the chairmanship of the Gun Ban Committee. That is a reaction, or actually, she said it was a protest after the members of the NBank voted 4-3. She was among those dissenting to give Chairman Saidamen Pangalungan that power, special power to grant gun ban exemptions at will as long as it was supposed to be meritorious and urgent. Now she says that rendered her committee useless, so she's stepping down immediately. Pia.
Right, Melissa Lopez reporting live from Comelec headquarters in Manila. Let's speak now to the Commissioner in charge of the Overseas Voting, Marlon Casquejo. Commissioner Casquejo, magandang gabi po sa inyo. Isa-isahin po lang natin yung mga lugar na may report ng pre-shaded ballot. How many pre-shaded ballots, sir, were there in Singapore? Isa lang po ba?
Well, as reported by the Singapore PE, yung ating congen doon, only one pre-shaded ballots were reported. And it's not a pre-shaded ballot, but it's a spoiled ballot that was used in the opening of the polls on Sunday when a certain voter voted, but the ballot was declared spoiled for some other reasons. Then it was reported and it was recorded in the minutes of voting. And it so happened on the following day, it was erroneously or inadvertently given again to the said voter, and that's why there was a complaint of so-called pre-shaded ballots. But then again, it's not a pre-shaded ballot, it's a spoiled ballot.
And that is the truth. We're not, in other words, we're not making up this story just so that we can feel better about our voting overseas, no? So totoo po yung sinasabi ninyo at sinasabi po ng Singapore officials natin na spoiled ballot on Sunday.
Yes, that was a spoiled ballot when a certain voter got it and it was declared as spoiled for some other reasons. Then it should have been separated in the good ballots.
Yes,
but somehow inadvertently it was again given to a certain voter. But even if it was given to a certain voter, that ballot cannot be read because it's already declared as spoiled.
Oo. What is the SOP, sir? Kanina sabi po niyo set aside. Pero kapag may spoiled ballot, is it just set aside, put in a separate, is there a separate envelope for it? Para hindi na masama sa mga bagong balota, yung mga gagamitin? Because
yes,
syempre, mag-iisip kayo para bang, ba't gano'n nangyari? Paano naman nangyari yon?
Well, that is the correct procedure. Once the ballot is declared spoiled, it will be separated in a separate envelope, and at the back of which will the chairman of the Special Board of Election Inspector should mark it as spoiled ballot. And it was properly, the procedure was properly done, and even it was recorded in the minutes of voting and counting.
Okay. But at least we're not going to have to go through, because I was going to ask you if you're going to tell me na oo nga spoiled appreciated ballot. I was going to ask you if we could go through the chain of custody para malaman po natin saan doon yung milagro. But anyway, so you're saying that, all right. But you're saying, sir, isa lang po yan, and there is no other case of a appreciated ballot or a spoiled ballot in the Singapore PE, in the consulate.
That is correct. It's an isolated case. Isa lang po, only one incident that was reported to the Office for Overseas Voting.
All right. What about Dubai, sir? What happened there?
Come again? Yeah.
Dubai? They came out with a statement saying no such incident marred or is marring the voting there.
I didn't get that question.
Dubai, sir. What is happening in Dubai?
Okay. In Dubai, there was a report also, but as I asked or conferred with the Dubai PE, there's no such incident and there was no such complaint regarding that one. The procedure, if any voter were able to get a appreciated ballot, he or she must report it immediately to the chairman of the SBI for the replacement of the ballot. But as I asked and confirmed with the SBI chairman of Dubai, there was no such incident or reported to them.
New York City, sir. What is the situation there? May problema po ba? May delay or something? What is going on?
Yes, there was a delay in the delivery of the materials, but as we all know, New York City is applying or using the postal voting. According to New York, as I talked to them just this morning during their town hall meeting, they are now mailing the mailing packet beginning today because the ballots and the other materials just arrived this morning.
Delays in delivery, sir, meaning from Manila to New York, or is it within New York? And problema na lang ng consulate doon yung pagpapadala to Filipino voters.
Yes, yun na lang po. They will be sending now the mailing packets to the overseas voters.
Okay, so there was no delay in the delivery from us, from the Philippines to the US? None?
From the Philippines, it was delivered as early as March 31, but it passed through something like in some area, in some country, and then from that country going to New York. So that was the cause of delay.
Sana lang that was taken into consideration, sir, no, para walang any further delay, meaning we should be working backwards. But anyway, thank you so much, Comelec Commissioner Marlon Casqueo. And sir, wala na pong ibang reklamo in any other post, any other embassy or any other consulate in the Philippines, in any part of the world?
Well, so far, wala na po. With regards to Hong Kong, we already approved as chair of, as the commissioner in charge of the overseas overseas voting. We already approved the additional 5 vote counting machines in addition to the existing 5. So wala na pong issue po in Hong Kong at this time.
All right, thank you so much, Comelec Commissioner Marlon Casqueo. Thank you, sir, for joining us. We'll take a quick break. This is Politics as Usual. Stay with us.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao, para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
Welcome back to Politics as Usual. I'm Pia Ontiveros. The One Cebu Party has declared support for Bongbong Marcos and Sara Duterte. Gwen Garcia, who is governor of the province, made the announcement. Her brother, Pablo John P.J. Garcia, who is running for re-election as congressman of the 3rd District of Cebu, resigned as Secretary General. He said he would stick it out with Isko Moreno and would certainly not abandon him on the battlefield. A faction of the I Am Pilipinas group led by Tim Orbos announcing today it was shifting support from Isko to Leni Robredo. Now, the days leading up to this, the Moreno campaign warned that if he were to withdraw from the race, a bulk of his votes would go to Marcos and not to Robredo. What is happening to the Moreno campaign? Let's speak to our Paolo Barcelon, who is with that campaign. Paolo.
Pia, ikaw muna Pilipinas, at least the group that supports Mayor Isko Moreno says it is in high morale and their organization is intact. The I Am Pilipinas group led by Secretary General Philip Piscio says they will stick it out with Moreno until the very end. Political officers and volunteers showed up earlier this afternoon saying not all of the I Am Pilipinas groups made that switch to the Vice President.
We are intact, and originally and until today, 98 to 99% of our members are staying with Yorme Isko Moreno. Ngayon, ginamit nila yung IM. I'm just requesting them, please refrain from doing that kasi you're trying to connote na akala mo yung IM Pilipinas parang lumilipat as a whole.
Earlier this morning, the former leader of Ikaw Muna Pilipinas, Tim Orbos, and its former Secretary General Elmer Argaño led a group called I Am Leni, who switched support from Moreno's candidacy to the bid of the Vice President. Now, Orbos' group explains they do not want survey frontrunner and former Senator Bongbong Marcos to win, and they believe, Pia, that Moreno still has a, quote, bright political future, unquote, even if he gives way to the candidacy of Vice President Robredo.
We now direct our call, however, for unity directed towards the supporters and volunteers of these candidates. Manalo na po tayo kung hindi po para sa kanila, sa ating mga kandidato, para po sa atin, para po sa bansa.
I Am Pilipinas, Pia, was a critical part, or continues to be a critical part of the Moreno campaign. It is the organization that called for Moreno's candidacy. They claim, Pia, that they had at its peak 203,000 members, but they're checking it right now, especially that they've lost chapters in Cebu, Zamboanga, and the head of the Nueva Ecija chapter. Now, they also organized all on-ground efforts for the Moreno campaign. As for Mayor Moreno, he says he respects the decision of the Orbos faction.
Maraming salamat sa kanila. I wish them all the best. And this separates the men from the boys. I hope the other group will trust them.
Well, the camp of Vice President Robredo welcomed this news. The spokesperson of the Vice President, Attorney Barry Gutierrez, thanked Orbos' group in a statement, saying coming together in shared hope, regardless of political color, is what will bring victory for the Filipino people. Pia.
Malaman yung, I hope they can trust them. But pag-usapan din natin ang Cebu in just a bit. But Paolo, ano ba yung plano ni Yorme in the coming days?
Well, Pia, he just intends to continue campaigning. In fact, tomorrow he has a scheduled campaign visit to Pampanga. That he's coming back to Pampanga, a province which he has been traveling since the listening tours. He plans to take a break on Holy Week, and we are getting reports that he might be headed somewhere again in Luzon come Black Saturday. Now, he has this usual strategy of convincing people, but earlier, Pia, when we were talking to him in the ambush interviews, he basically said that he wants to be a healing president. He wants to be someone who could heal the nation, and he said that, or he continued his narrative of promoting himself as an alternative. Usually, Pia, he says, if you don't want to vote for what he calls pulahan, an allegory or an allusion to the Marcoses, or the pink lawans, an allusion to the Robredos, then he presents himself as this alternative, Pia.
Alternative parang third force. Sa Cebu kasi, did we get it right? Para bang umasa si Isko na he would get the one Cebu endorsement and he didn't get it. So Parang nagkataon naman, 1-2 punch in one day.
Well, Pia, you're right. Actually, he visited Cebu 6 times since the listening tour, since he filing his certificate of candidacy. In one of those listening tours, Pia, he was toured by Governor Gwen Garcia, who even toured him around the capital and did the same sign that he is using. So, us in the campaign beat, we were having like conversations. Will Garcia endorse Mayor Moreno, or will they go with that political shell game, wherein many members of the same family would go for a certain candidate? But in the end, as what we've seen earlier, One Cebu endorsed Marcos, except for Deputy Speaker PJ Garcia, who he said in a statement earlier that he cannot endorse Marcos, and he has been consistent in that messaging. He's one of those key figures, Tia, that we saw during the proclamation rally, and he said he's sticking with Moreno until the end. Back to you, Tia.
A split in the Garcia family. Paolo Barcelon there reporting. Thank you, Paolo. All this happening while the Lenny Kiko campaign is claiming it is gaining ground. There was a huge rally in Pampanga, Gloria Arroyo's hometown, for Lenny and Kiko. Joining us now is Senator Kiko Pangilinan. He was supposed to join us via Zoom, but there's a little bit of a problem with connection because he's in Senator Kiko, you're in Catanduanes, of all places, pag bumabagyo.
Here. Can you hear me?
Yes, Senator Kiko,
Yeah.
hi. Oo.
Yeah, the weather cleared up this evening, late afternoon. It was intermittent yung bugso ng ulan dito, pero for some strange reason, pagdating namin ni Vice President Lenin, clear. Hindi tumigil.
Okay. Senator Kiko, dahil nabanggit ko ng Pampanga, does this happen often? Local politicians want to endorse Lenny but not you. It happened a few weeks ago, so you skipped that sortie. But this time in Pampanga, the farmers went up on stage and they said, well, if kung ang mga politiko hindi magtataas ng kamay nyo, kami po, yun ang gagawin namin.
Yes. Nangyayari talaga yan. We cannot force the locals carry go. Kumbaga, really their choice. And therefore, we have to deal with that reality. And sa akin naman, it is still a partial victory when they endorse VP Lenny. Better than them endorsing her. So, sa akin, okay na yun. Because after all, I want VP Lenny to win. And that's precisely why I set aside my own plan to run for re-election and agreed to be her vice president because I believe she's the most serving in the middle of these crises that we're facing. We need her leadership and her qualifications. She's the most qualified. And that's why pagka merong sumuporta kay VP Lenny ng Davao, and hindi ako sinusuportahan, that's still a good thing for her bid.
Senator Kiko, sabi ni Barry Gutierrez that June Simon, former Quezon City Mayor, na kinausap si Ping, is not authorized to speak for the Lenny Kiko campaign dahil pinapakiusapan daw ni Mayor June si Senator Ping na mag-withdraw na lang in favor of Tito Soto. I'm sorry, na mag-withdraw na lang siya in favor of Lenny. Ano bang nangyayari talaga behind the scenes? Are you trying to unite the opposition forces, the so-called anti-Marcos candidates? Or no, you're not?
Wala kami pinag-uusapan. I have not spoken to former Mayor June Simon about it. So, tama ang sinabi ni Barry na no such talks. And if he's doing that, he's doing that in his personal capacity. Hindi ko siya kinakausap, hindi ko siya kinakausap.
But would you ever consider withdrawing or stepping aside and saying that you will endorse just another VP candidate so that the anti-Marcos, again, the so-called anti-Marcos candidates will win so that you can make sure that you can defeat BBM?
The momentum is on our side. So, and you must remember in 2010, in the vice presidential race, VP Bina was behind. It was 17% in March, but ended up at 40% by May. The same with VP Lenny. He was behind in 2016, number 4, and then ended up number 1 by May. So the momentum is on our side.
Yeah. Well, when you say the momentum is on your side, are you talking about the rallies, or are those rallies reflecting and reflected in the numbers? Because VP Lenny is still a far second as far as all the surveys are concerned.
Well, yeah, being second is still better than having been fourth 6 years ago and still winning it, diba? And number 2, it's not just the rallies, it's also the surveys. VP Lenny has hit almost double-digit increase in her vote, while I increased my vote by 50%, additional 50% of the vote in just 1 month. That is your momentum, plus the rallies. So previous data, historical data in terms of polling has shown that those in the 4th place won, both in 2010 and 2016. So why withdraw?
Okay. Senator Kiko, once Cebu, through its support behind BBM and earlier behind Sara Duterte also, Cebu has about 3.2 million plus votes. Although PJ Garcia is still for Isko, he says, how many votes ang makukuha nyo sa Cebu given this situation?
We have not looked into that. This is a latest development. But, I was number 1 in Cebu, and I ran as an independent candidate for the Senate in 2007. So I'd like to think we will not, hindi tayo ma-reduce, in other words, makakakuha pa rin tayo ng vote, for sure. And here it's really, this is going to be, at least for the vice presidential race, I see this as going down the wire. So every vote will count. It does not matter if you don't win in that area. What matters is you get enough votes in that area, which will, when you add all the other votes that you get, that will bring you over the top. Yeah.
Pero ang hinahabol po ninyo, Senator Kiko, hindi lang isang kandidato, meaning Sara Duterte. You have to get past Tito Soto also. Hindi po ba?
Yeah, again, I will go back to historical data of poll results in poll surveys in 2010 and 2016. Those who were in 3rd and 4th place ended up winning. So, ganun lang yun. Tayo, trabaho lang. Every vote counts. If we are going to base our decisions on science and historical data, nananalo nga yung nasa 4th place noong March 2010 at nanalo rin yung nasa 4th place noong March 2016. So, malaking posibilidad, we are in 3rd place na pwedeng manalo tayo by May 2022.
Let's talk
so,
yes.
we will just, every vote count. In 2016, they were telling Vice President Lenny not to go to Ilocos because hindi siya makakakuha ng boto doon. Sayang lang ang oras niya. She went there, she got 200,000 votes in the Ilocos region, and she won by 260,000 votes. So it does not matter if the politicians are supporting other candidates. Well, of course it matters, but what matters really in the end is we will just have to keep reaching out and getting the votes. And kahit hindi tayo manalo doon sa lugar, basta meron lang tayong significant amount of votes, tapos pag sinungma mo yung boto natin sa Cebu sa iba, kaya nating ikinalo ito.
All right. Very briefly now, Senator Kiko, we have less than a minute. What they did to Aika Robredo, that what made the rounds online. Did you see this coming? And you're no stranger to this either.
Well, I think what we're beginning to see is a backlash from that, talagang unfortunate and fake and really disinformation campaign being launched against Vice President Lenny's candidacy. Marami ang turn off, marami ang hindi pumapayag sa ganyang estilo at lumilipat. So mukhang nagpaktas yan at magbabackfire yan. At lalo lang tinutulungan ng aming kandidatura, ang kandidatura ni Vice President Lenny dahil nagkakaroon ng simpatya ang tao. So, akala nila ito ay makakatulong sa kanila. Hindi po, nakakatulong po dahil yung tao mismo nagkakaroon ngayon ng simpatya dahil sa maliwanag na kasinungalingan at kawalan ng respeto ang ginagawa nila.
Senator Kiko Pangilinan, thank you very much for joining us this evening, sir. We have more stories next. Stay with us. Be right back. Welcome back to Politics as Usual. I'm Pia Ontiveros. So we had all those reports of people approaching candidates trying to convince them to step aside. One such story was from Ping Lacson, who said, as we mentioned earlier, June Simon, who was mayor of Quezon City during the Cory Aquino administration, spoke to him about this. Robredo campaign spokesman Barry Gutierrez saying Simon was not authorized to speak for them. So what is the real score about all these efforts, so-called efforts to unite? Anjo Almada joins us live for this from San Fernando in La Union, where there was a rally, as we understand. Anjo, why is Lenny Robredo not initiating unity talks among candidates?
Well, Pia, Vice President Lenny Robredo's position after formalizing her presidential bid in October 2021 remains the same, that they're no longer actively pursuing unity talks among candidates. But if they do want to talk, well, they are open to talking. It should be noted that it was Robredo herself who initiated meeting with then potential presidential aspirants with an end goal of preventing a Marcos from returning to power. She said she was even ready to give way and just help. But all her efforts failed when Senators Manny Pacquiao, Panfilo Lacson, and Manila Mayor Isko Moreno all filed their candidacies. Lacson also had his own unification formula where all other candidates will drop out in support of one common bet who's leading in pre-election surveys. But now, Lacson, Pacquiao, and Moreno all appear to have decided to finish the race. Ikaw Muna, Pilipinas, led by Team Orbos, who just shifted support to Robredo today, even called for a unification among presidential candidates to beat Marcos, but he said only the camps of Robredo and Labor leader Leody de Guzman were open to the idea. The rest rejected their proposal. Lacson even described the call for unity as a selfish scheme. Well, the pre-election surveys show that Marcos leads the pack of presidential hopefuls by a wide margin, followed by Robredo, and you have Pacquiao, Moreno, and Lacson. All are stuck with single-digit scores, Pia.
Anjo, there are two things about politics, hindi ba? Number one, that anything can happen, and number two, that anything can happen in a matter of weeks or days. In this case, it's 27 days, 3.5 weeks before election day, before D-Day, right?
That's right, Pia. We don't know yet if that's already final, that there won't be any unity talks among presidential candidates. But of course, we're still anticipating if there will be developments in the coming days, especially leading to the last few weeks of the election, especially with the new survey out. How will this change the landscape of these presidential hopefuls if one or two of them will drop out and give way for a potential common candidate of, as you mentioned earlier, anti-Marcos candidates in order to really beat the front runner, Pia.
Anjo Alimario there reporting live from La Union. Ateneo and La Salle setting their rivalry aside as they join forces to show support for one presidential candidate. We'll speak to a sports writer and host on how politics and sports are not so different when we return. We are on our final stretch. This is Politics as Usual. I'm Pia Ontiveros. Well, can politics mix with sports? Some believe it should. Others say no, don't you dare bring politics into sports. But this 2022 politics has gone into the basketball arena, specifically the Mall of Asia Arena, where 7 universities are battling it out in the just begun second round of the men's basketball division of the UAAP. The most famous collegiate basketball rivalry began it with a call from their school presidents, Father Bobby Yap and Brother Bernie Oka, for Ateneans and LaSallians who will watch the game to leave their blue and green shirts at home and instead wear pink. And UST following it up with a similar announcement, appealing to fans to wear pink in every game day. But before we go any further, let's check in with Pauline Versosa, who is standing by live at the Mall of Asia Arena, MOA, where the Ateneo LaSalle game has just wrapped up, and balita ko panalo ang Ateneo. Pawi, sorry. So, I know this isn't Sports Desk with Andre Felix, but tell us 2 things, no? How the game went, of course, the score, and tell us how pink was that crowd.
Well, Pia, to no surprise, I guess, for Ateneo fans, they remain undefeated here in the UAAP men's basketball tournament. They just beat the De La Salle Green Archers once again in the second round of the tournament, 75-68. So now they have 8 wins in the tournament, while LaSalle drops to 5 wins and 6 losses. But, Pia, more than that, from the usual sea of blue and green, tonight's Ateneo LaSalle match turned pink as the rival schools joined forces to show support for presidential candidate Vice President Leni Robredo. Pia, no less than the heads of both universities, Ateneo President Father Roberto Yap, SJ, and DLSU President Brother Bernard Oka, FC, made the announcement urging the respective students and alumni who support Robredo to wear pink in tonight's match. But Pia, this is not the first time that Ateneo LaSalle have done away with their usual colors to make a political statement. Back in 2016, fans were also urged to wear black to condemn the human rights violations under the Duterte administration. Then in 2009, it was also a sea of yellow at the Araneta Coliseum as tribute to the late President Cory Aquino. But on social media, like what you mentioned, Pia, some netizens raised concern on whether politics should mix with sports, but the Ateneo LaSalle community stood their ground, even blaming politics for why sports, or collegiate sports for that matter, was put to a halt for over 2 years. And here at the Mall of Asia Arena, students and alumni believe it is through events like these that they can express their solidarity.
Politics is everywhere. Politics affects all of us, especially if we have a good or a bad governance. So it doesn't matter where we are. It's okay to openly speak up on what you want to say. And nobody is being forced to do anything. We're here because we want to.
That's what's really nice, or like the essence of the UAAP games, because our rival schools, quote-unquote rivals, can unite, and especially now that we can show our support.
Despite the rivalry, parang we still want a better government, diba? For a brighter future po.
We're proud that they're making the right choice. This is not about politics. This is about the future of the country.
Well, beyond the court, the Ateneo LaSalle rivalry was still on full display. Going back, the Ateneo Blue Eagles won this game 75-68. And let me just correct what I mentioned earlier. LaSalle drops to 5 wins and 3 losses, while the Blue Eagles remain undefeated with 8 wins. And this is also their 34th straight victory in the UAAP. Pia.
Pawi, it isn't just Ateneo LaSalle, no, making a political stand in the games by wearing their preferred candidates' colors, right?
Well, yes, Pia. As a matter of fact, during the game earlier of UP versus NU, fans were also wearing pink. So they are also joining all these other UAAP universities, showing solidarity in support of presidential candidate Leni Robredo. UST also following suit, announcing on their official social media pages, urging the Thamasian community to wear pink in all of their succeeding games here in the UAAP. Pia.
Pauline Versosa there reporting live from the MOA Arena in Pasay. So is politics uniting varsity teams that otherwise would be at each other's throats? And that argument about, yes, politics can mix with sports as against No, it should not. Sports writer and host Naveen Ganglani, joins us now to talk about that. Hi Naveen, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Tamang-tama to end a political talk show with sports. Okay, you tweeted, and I quote, "In 2022, there is no keeping politics out of sports or anything really." And further, you said on Twitter, and that's good, very good. Thousands of people look up to sports models for inspiration. You were quote tweeting another tweet, right? And we're showing that right now. So talk to us more about this.
First of all, Pia, thank you for having me tonight. It's a pleasure. I think what's important to note here is that sports athletes now, no matter where they are in the world, whether that's out west in the United States or even here in the Philippines, they are more educated than they've ever been. They've been more informed than they've ever been. You can partly say that's because of the social media generation. Now that people have access to social media, to articles, to different forms of content, they can be informed. And I think it's important for sports to have I wouldn't say role in determining politics or have a say in the political landscape too, is because these sports icons are looked up upon by young kids, young children. Over the last few years, there's been this kind of saying that athletes should stick to sports. You know, there was even a saying that basketball players should shut up and dribble, which is kind of ridiculous to think about, right? Because when I think about this, I think there's a 6 or 7-year-old young boy or girl there somewhere and watching their favorite athlete. Now, if they watch this favorite athlete of theirs just perform on the court, go home, and not have a say or feel like their voice has to be quieted when it comes to the political landscape, then what does that do for the future generations? But if they see that these athletes have the courage, the bravery to stand up, not exactly to promote or to campaign for a specific candidate, but rather to speak their mind, to show everyone that, hey, just because I'm an athlete, I have the ability to voice my opinions too, because I should have a say in how the future of this country is going to go. I think that's the most important part of it.
Athletes have a voice too. Yung asking students, alumni of the schools to wear pink, some people say, doesn't that alienate those Ateneans and LaSalle, for example, or even UST UP, those who are not for Lenny and Kiko?
I think it's possible. Yes, it will depend on, it's subjective, almost like everything's relative, right? So I think the key word here is that LaSalle, Ateneo, UST, what they said was we encourage people to come in pink. We're not requiring you to come in pink. And some people who would probably say, don't mix sports with politics. Is it because they actually believe in that? Is it because they're from a former generation? Is it because they're rooting for another candidate? It's tough to say. But that's the important part there. They're encouraging people to come and wear this color and be united, but not requiring.
Well, we did mix sports with politics because you're here on the show. You're a sports writer. But anyway, Mikey Reyes had this interesting interview with Coach Yan Giao, who recounted how his father was arrested and detained when martial law was declared in 1972. And that was naiyak pa nga si Coach Yan there, right?
Exactly. Going back to those times too, I saw a picture recently which was sent by a friend of mine, Storm. Back in 1972, there was an NCAA game between De La Salle College and Mapua, where at halftime, I believe students or players came to the middle of the court and presented a banner that was also speaking of their opinions in the political landscape. So in terms of being vocal, in the sports scene with what's happening in the political sphere, I think that's always been present. It just hasn't been as vocalized as it is now. And I think as we go on, as the years pass by, it's a trend that's just going to keep increasing, because as the generations pass by, I can speak about this as someone who was born in the 90s. I have little sisters, I work with younger people. More than ever, people are encouraged to voice out their opinion. So I think it's only going to be a trend that continues.
Yeah, we're going to try and do this very quickly, Naveen.
Yes.
We've had famous basketball players crossing over to politics. Senator Robert Jaworski. In this election, Franz Pumaren, Coach Franz, running for Quezon City Congressman. Alvin Patrimonio running for Mayor of Cainta, Rizal. No? And people are saying, politics and sports not so different, right?
That's true. Now, some of these sports personalities might use the popularity that they gain from the sports landscape to catapult their political careers, right? But is that something that should be looked down upon? I wouldn't think so, because it depends on the intentions of the candidates. And that's part of the reason why I think, again, it's important that sports and politics has a role to play with each other. Because that, if a voter would see a coach or a player that they used to watch run for politics, that would encourage them to research more about politics. Like, what do I believe in? What platforms do I want to vote for? You know, who should I vote for? And I think we're only going to see more of it. At the same time, too, ultimately, whatever your past was, whether you're a coach, a player, it depends what you're willing to do for the public after if you win the position.
Okay. Last two questions for your final words, Naveen. And you answered with one-word answers. Okay.
Sure.
So first, are you comfortable enough to answer this question? If you were in MOA tonight, what color would you be wearing? I mean, you're Lasal, no? you would have been in green, no? And I'm Ateneo, so I would have been blue, but pink. Would you have been in pink tonight? Yes or no? And well, your reaction to the win by Ateneo tonight? Sorry, against Lasal. Sorry.
For Unity, yes, I would be in pink. And in terms of Ateneo and Lasal, the game today, I'm not surprised. I think the championship is Ateneo's to lose. I think the question now is, will they go undefeated on the way to the championship?
Oh, you're questioning the sweep. Okay. Sige. Anyway, thank you so much for being with us tonight, Naveen Ganglani, for literally crossing over from all those sports shows you host and guest into a political talk show. Proof that politics and sports can mix. Salamat. We've been told before, don't talk politics at the dinner table or the family reunion or in Viber groups and risk digital warfare. But we can talk about it here at this table on this show, your weekly political appointment fix, politics as usual. I'm Pia Ontiveros. See you back here next Tuesday, 8 p.m.
Philippines Network, Radyo Ronda, DXKT Davao, member, Kapisan.